It's time to wrap up the year in a few words or so with our friend and our colleague, Coach Urban Meyer. And Urban, you're in a little golf event going on there in mid-Florida. I'm out here on Northwest Florida, getting ready to have a big event this weekend. So I know that playing at a tournament is a grind. I mean, after you play for 4 days, your energy level kind of slips. How you holding up and how you hitting them?
Well, we start tomorrow. We have a pro-am today. It's the LPGA Hilton Grand Vacations. They treat us great. Got a bunch of good celebrities here. I was hanging out with Charles Woodson last night. I'm playing with Emmett Smith. I think Emmett Smith tomorrow. So I look forward to that.
Couple of Gators out there knocking it around. Emmett seems to be doing well these days. What a player he was. Well, as we look back now, gosh, it's over. It's hard to believe. And it was a weird year. I'm not sure what all we learned from the year, except that a few challenges for coaches and players out there in the great game of college football. If you could, other than the obvious things like NIL and transfer portal issues, what are some of your takeaways from 2023?
Yeah, I think it's a very different game. It's a very different world in recruiting. It's recruiting 24/7. But if you're a fan, it's as good as it gets. I mean, that was the committee, that everybody challenges. There's 13 people on it, only 3 coaches. And how do you select the right 4 teams? They did. Those 2 games at the end of the season were outstanding. The playoff games, and then the final game was, they got it right. You have a team that won the championship, the Wolverines, that were, in my opinion, by far the best team in the country at the end of the year. They played phenomenal. But they also have a coach that was suspended 6 games, and he's now interviewing for an NFL job. So it was an amazing year. But as a fan, I'll be honest, they probably care less about NIL and transfer portal. At the end of the day, if you're a fan, you're buying a ticket, and you love your team, all you want to do is win. And there's a lot of great teams out there this year.
Well, that's probably true. There are some fans that are quite upset about some of the things, though. And if you're old school in terms of your values, which you are and I am, you're concerned, and it's hard to deal with it. In the end, it's probably better for the player, certainly financially better. But the question is the game better? And I think that's the challenge that is before us right now, to keep this great game going, to bring the fans in and deal with some issues. There's a lot of people, a lot of kids in the transfer portal yet still waiting for a place to play. I guess we're going through some growing pains. You talk to a lot of coaches. You're a coach guy. You say that all the time. And what are some of your friends and your pals talking about as coaches?
Well, one thing that I started becoming our primary focus after winning was Real Life Wednesdays. We call it Life After the Sport. And, it's not a 4-year degree, it's a 40-year degree, and those type of things. And then the game started to evolve about 3 and done, where players would come in and just leave after 3 years, and we would try so hard to get them back. And then we actually, I happened to Florida. We're just pushing kids to get degrees, and then they get the degree and they're unhireable because it's a low GPA at a major that doesn't really help them. And that was the evolution of Real Life Wednesdays. Fiscally preparing them for life after football, getting them internships, getting job shadow opportunities. And a lot of that seems to be gone. The focus is on where do I get the best deal. And unfortunately, buddy, the deals, there are some major deals. But when you start talking about 10, 15, even 20, 25, $30,000 for a college student, and they're maybe, changing schools, giving up networking, maybe getting a less prestigious degree. Those are the concerns I have. Also, when programs are now saving scholarships for simply transfer portal players, that leaves a lot of high school players without scholarships. So the residual effect of this is, it's mounting. Like you said, there's there's over 1,000 players still in that transfer portal without a place to go, is what I was told. And you imagine being the parent of that player or an agent representing that player who encouraged him to transfer, and now they're left without a place to go. So there's a lot of residual that effects of these new rules, but there's also some great stuff that's happening. You know, the fact that the players deserve to get paid name and likeness. Absolutely, it's called capitalism. It's called the American way. But the cheating that's gone on with just I think it's called collectives, where just people give money and they give out the money to players for pay for play.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm still trying to put my hand around that one. Like, how is that legal? And I think Florida State is in trouble with it. But from my understanding is, you know, the old everybody does it. Everybody does do that.
You're exactly right, and the stories that I hear, and I'm not even in it like you are just amazing, and I don't doubt the veracity of them because of the people they come from. But you know, you hear things like the going rate for a quarterback in a Power Four, I guess it is now, school is over $1 million a year. I mean, just right like that. Okay. Then I heard a story the other day, which you know some of the people involved, so I'll change the names. But I know that, let's just say, Mississippi State identified a player they wanted. They wanted him big time. Really terrific offensive lineman in the portal, and they went after him. Comes right from the horse's mouth, and the player was told, "We'll give you 50,000 right now to come here." You know, and the player laughed at him. He says, LSU has offered me over $1 million already. Now, how do you compete with that? And as you say, it wasn't supposed to be this way. I don't want to get on my soapbox this morning because you know I love college football. But that my understanding was there was no, 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 no. Do not use this as part of the recruiting tool. And yet that's exactly what it became.
Yeah, when I first heard that, people said, "Don't use this for recruiting tool."
You laugh.
Got off the ground from laughing so hard. And, it's okay. What actually happens too is when, you know, a coach or someone identifies on their staff they want this player, they'll call donors and say, I need a couple $100,000 from you to give this to a player to convince him to come to our school." Which, right in black and white, so you can't do that. But you know, I also think, buddy, there's, you know, a job of an agent is to inflate the market, and I think some of the numbers you hear are really inflated. Like I hear, you know, it's the agent's job to say, well, you know, get the no different than inflating a coach's market. You know? So it's amazing the games come to this because, you know, 25 or almost 40 years ago when I got involved in the game of football, I'm not, you know, want to be one of those old guys to say back when, but, you know, it was all about team. It was all about education. It was about networking at a university and that becoming your home.
And I think that's exactly what we're talking about because you are an old school guy in values that you do want the players to succeed, as you've had many players who have. And so that delicate balance you have to go with there. Look, you've dealt with money men and boosters before. You have to rely on them. I always have in college football. There were a handful of them that really help you drive your bus. But these guys are basically almost in control now. Like you say, is the recruiters when you're out there getting a player, you call the donor and say, what can he come up with? That's just the way it is. I don't know. I've tried to find something good about it. But the one good thing I will say was college football was exciting. Back to Michigan. It's a guy you know pretty well, don't have a great regard for. I'll let you speak to that if you want to. But how can a guy get was it $3 million bonus he got? Coach half a season and get $3 million. I want that deal, Urban.
Yeah, it's, you know, regardless of everything, that team was incredible. We in Fox Big Noon Kickoff, we covered them the last 3 weeks of the season, and we covered them also in the playoff. The Big Ten championship game. A phenomenal story by, you know, you can't take away what those players did. You know, Blake Corum, J.J. McCarthy, the defense was outstanding. Regardless of everything, that was the best team in college football. Now you get to layer through what happened. And there's 2 investigations. There's one about having players on their campus during COVID, which is a major violation. You have once again, these are all allegations. It all happened. So it remains to be seen what's going to take place there. A lot of their players are preparing for the NFL, so it'll be a different looking team. But make no mistake about it, that was the best team in college football. Now, once they layer through everything, we'll find out what happened.
We talked about that scene at the Big House when the Michigan lineman got hurt. The crowd was chanting his name. There was a unity there and all of that you sensed because it blew you away. You talked about it. And yet, in the face of all this, you say, can you build that kind of camaraderie, team spirit, when it's really a game of individual contractors?
Yeah, they did it. You got to take your hat off to them, and they did it. I think Washington did it. So there's still incredible teams out there. It's a challenge, probably unlike most have ever faced in the coaching profession. How do you take the world of NIL, transfer portal, individualism, and create a team? It's not impossible. It's very hard. The two teams in the final game of the season, and I think when Nick Saban retired, what he did with his team this year was phenomenal. Because early in the years, Alabama looked a shell of themselves, nothing like what we're all used to seeing. So it's certainly possible. It's just very difficult for staff to do that now.
You and Nick had some great battles together versus each other. You came out on top several times against him, one of the few who did. You had one of the best records against him head-to-head of anybody. Yet, I think you know him fairly well. But I was, and others were kind of shocked and surprised, other than saying Nick Saban chooses his own time and place when he stepped down. Were you?
I'm sorry?
Were you surprised when Nick stepped down?
No, I'm happy for him. I obviously got a really good relationship with him over the years, and we did have some incredible games, 08, 09, and then, 14, the national championship year at Ohio State. So a lot of respect for Coach. I've known him forever. We've always got along great. But he needs to go live his, I'm happy for him. And at the appropriate time, I think I'm going to ski in some event coming up in the spring of that Beach Bowl Classic thing. There's a lot of life to live out there. I'm finding that out now. And, when you're consumed by something for so many years of your life, I imagine he'll go through some boredom. I imagine he's going to do TV. I would guess he would be involved with ESPN Game Day. He's on there quite frequently. And him and his wife and his grandkids, and I don't know if he has grandkids yet, but and his family get to enjoy some time.
Well, tell us if you were talking to Nick, what to expect, because you've been through it.
You'll have withdrawal early on. You'll be wanting to get up and go to a staff meeting. You're going to want to be around the players. What you're not going to miss is when someone misses a class or there's some bad call you get about the player did something. You're not going to miss the losing a recruit or hearing that a player wants more money or they're going to transfer. I didn't have to deal with that, but that's what's going on now. And you don't have to deal with loss anymore, which I had a hard time with. So, and you're going to find out you have something that you really never had before, and that's TIME. You have time. And it'll drive you, at times, it drives you, nuts. But I'm way beyond that now, and he will too.
Nick has the same quality that you do about this. And sometimes people only look at the surface and don't see this. That is the personal involvement with players and the willingness to help them any way you can. That's legal, of course. I know that it's a personal thing for you when something happens to a player. We're going to talk about one in just a minute. Nick's had that. He's gotten in trouble because he's given second chances. I know you and Nick have talked about this. You did that a few times. Deep down, people don't really understand. Yeah, you want the player, but you want the person. Talk about that with Nick.
Yeah, I'm at the point in my life that if I give a player a second, third, or fourth chance and someone's not happy with it, care less, buddy. This is including administrators. When I'm the one that's in that home, I'm the one that's recruiting that player. I know where their background, what they're from, the difficulties, and I make a commitment to that family that we're going to help that player and stick by the player and never. And now there's the core value issues that we had certain issues, if it came up, they had to move on. But some of the things that when I hear people say, why did Coach Meyer give them that second or third chance? And, at first that would bother me. I'm at the point now in my life, I would have given that player a fourth or fifth chance too. Now, I'm not saying they don't understand that. When you give them a chance, you're not just like turning your back and saying that's okay. Behind the scenes, you're putting them in counseling, you're doing all kinds of things to help this human being get right. So, yeah, of course, I would, looking back now, if I needed to give a player 10 chances, I would.
Mm.
Is that wrong? Once again, I don't care, buddy. I mean, I'm so moved on. I look at it as people, and I look at it as 17 to 21 years old, as that's the development side of life. You pull football from them, you pull discipline from them. We've seen what happens at times, and it can be terrible.
A colleague of yours that you relied upon for wisdom for many years once explained to me when you had a player who got really deep in your doghouse, multiple chances of failure, and he was, quote unquote, no longer with the team for a period of time. And then at some point you thought about bringing him back. I talked to your colleague. I said, explain to me what kind of chance this is, and what does it mean when you say no longer with the team, and will he ever be able to get back on the team? And this person said, and you'll know who it is when I say it, said, okay, he's in Hawaii in a canoe with one paddle. If he gets back, okay. That's about right, isn't it?
It is. And we had one player get the second DUI out of Utah. And we put all these demands on him, and one was graduate from college. And he did. And we welcomed him back after suspending him for a year. So there's so many great stories, and there's one tragic story that I did remove a guy from the team. So those are all very personal to, I'm sure, Nick Saban. I remember him getting criticized, not like I did, but criticized too about giving guys chances. They never, I don't know the exact rules, but you just didn't hear many suspensions come out of Alabama. And I didn't blame him. I knew behind the scenes. Because we did briefly talk about some of the things they did. If someone went off path, to get them back on path.
Yeah. Urban Meyer, wrapping up the year on the best Fridays in football. This will be called the best Fridays out of football today. Really appreciate, Coach, you spending your time with me this season. Brendan would be here, but he had daddy duties today, and we've had a really interesting year. One where we got to observe college football up close, thanks to your job. By the way, congratulations on another fantastic season. Big Noon Saturday, record numbers, and a good team.
Yeah, I love Mark Ingram. Added so much to us. We have Brady Quinn, Matt Liner, Rob Stone, and when Reggie Bush left, and we had Mark Ingram, no one knew, but man, he's going to be a star in television. We had some, like you said, record numbers at the end of the year. So we're strong. We're coming back. Hopefully, get part of the playoff next year, and I love doing it.
Yeah, it looks like it's a lot of fun. Good bunch of guys there. Let's talk sadly about somebody that we got some bad news about this week. We talk about recruiting players, by the way, and you raised it to an art form. I mean, no one's ever recruited like that in Florida and never will. The number 1, 2, and 3 classes you got over a period of time, incredible. But not without some cost on you, took a toll. You would recruit players 2 and 3 years sometimes to get them. One player that when Florida got it was a big news story, Ronald Powell. May you rest in peace. He was the number 1 player in the country to prospect. If you could share with us, and he had his ups and downs, obviously, share with us a little bit about Ronald Powell, how you recruited him, how he became a Gator, and the issues that he faced.
Yeah, heartbreaking. A couple former players reached out to me and shared me the information about Ron passing away, and it blows your mind. I mean, a young, healthy, great-looking young guy that we recruited out of California. I was actually opposed to going to California just because it's so far away from home, and if there are issues. But when you run into, I think with Josh Shaw, we recruited out another great player, Ronald Powell. That was a Diamond Keys the year, I think number 1 class of all time in college football. So great player. He didn't. It took him a minute to get going in college football. There were a couple injuries, but awesome person. I mean, never was an issue at all. Beautiful smile. Loved to be around him. Tough as nails. He was on my, I was in charge of special teams, and he was a great player in special teams. So I don't know what happened, buddy. It's heartbreaking.
You were all kind of left stunned by that. No news coming out about what happened. And I know it's a loss to everybody who was a Gator, especially, and someone like you recruited him and coached him. It's hard to see your players passing like that when you realize that you were with them when they were just 18 and 19. So RIP to him and his family. All the best to him. And I know it's going to be devastating for you. Let's talk for a second about the transfer portal. Now, this is the thing that gets coaches in trouble. They say, well, it takes time, it takes money, it takes this, you can't do that. And it is hard to go get a guy to transfer portal. We talked about the Mississippi State lineman being offered $50,000 and him laughing and saying LSU offered me $1 million, if that's true. You ever hear of this guy? I know you have. In a 2-hour span, his team added a 5-star wide receiver, Shaz Preston from Alabama, a 5-star wide receiver transfer, Mario Williams from Southern Cal, high school cornerback 4-star Jaden Lewis, all came 10 days after landing a 5-star quarterback transfer, Ty Thompson from Oregon. In only a month on the job, Coach John Sumrall has put the entire country on notice. How in the world does a guy like that do something like that?
What school is that, buddy? I'm not sure.
Tulane.
Is that right?
Yes, Tulane.
So Tulane's going to be, I imagine Fox Big Noon Kickoff might be picking.
That's right. He was at Troy, apparently, and so he there. I didn't know much about him. I still don't know anything about him. But man, I mean, you say that it's like guys like Prime, Coach Prime. When you say, well, we don't have the money, or we're not moving very fast. There's unfortunately, it's always the grass is greener for fans. Look what they're getting. How come we're not getting that? And that kind of stuff puts coaches on the hot seat.
It does. Now that you said it, I'm sure I'll hear about it, and I've kind of taken some time away from it, so I wasn't aware. The question is, how does that happen? Mm-hmm. That's what everyone's asking. I'm as interested as the fan is right now to find out how in the world that happened. And at the end of the day, you got some talented players at Tulane. Tulane's had some really good seasons, but that's interesting.
Other than New Orleans being what it is for young people, I don't know what it is unless they got money. People tell me they got a lot of money there privately. It's a private school, so I do not know. I just thought you might have heard something. I have not. A couple more questions for you, Coach Meyer, before I let you go. Thank you very much for your time. You attended an event over the weekend, I think, in Miami with Timmy Tebow. What a guy he has become. And you're on his board of his charity, and I know you're proud of him, love him like a son. To update the world about Tim Tebow.
Yeah, Tim, we had a Tim Tebow Foundation event in Naples, and it was over the top. His primary focus right now is special needs kids, and then also anti-human trafficking. And so Tim and I got to play golf with some donors down there, and had an incredible event. The band Low Cash played, and we're talking about future events. I'm trying to get one maybe in Columbus with him. So Tim's doing awesome. He's him and his wife are doing fantastic, and Tim's Tim. He wakes up every day on a mission to make the world a better place and provide faith, hope, and love for those in their darkest times. That's the mission statement of the Tebow Foundation. Hard to believe. I joined the board in 2009, 2010, after he left Florida, and the impact he's made. And this anti-human trafficking piece that I'm very involved with in Columbus and Sarasota. Shelley volunteered for time there. I had no idea that existed, and it takes your breath away. And if anybody watching here get involved. There's one thing about sometimes you hear about charity events or charities, you're not quite sure what happens with that money. But the Tebow Foundation, I assure you, as everyone, that it's all for the good.
That's wonderful, and you're right. It is a problem that you're not aware of, and until you hear someone like Tim bring it to light. And I do remember sitting with you in Florida Field one day. I think it was in between practices or whatever, and you took a deep breath and looked out over the swamp and said, man, what a place. And I get to coach Tim Tebow.
That was a great time in my life, and I know the Gators really enjoyed watching that guy play. But the Swamp Kings really did a nice job bringing that back to life. To this day, it was almost like a reunion for the players and coaches to talk on the phone and all that. So that was a great time in college football history, and I'm really glad the Swamp Kings brought it out like that.
It was terrific. And by the way, we're going to share some things with some fans and hopefully donors to some major causes at Steve Spurrier's restaurant, and a date to be determined during the month of April. You and Steve Spurrier, who owned every title, every ring, every win almost that Florida's had, you built the culture there, will share with us some of the stories that you can share with a bunch of Gator fans and people willing to give money to some great causes, which will yet to be named. And I'm looking forward to being part of it, Irvin. It's going to be an exciting time.
And we got to set a date here. I'll get those to you. April's showing up fast. So
It is. I'll call Freddie Weeby today and see what we can get on that. Make sure you pick their dates, obviously. One last thing, proof that college football is a wonderful game. Anything can happen. Kellen DeBoer was playing in a championship one day, had a nice run, a great year, as you pointed out all year, how good a team Washington was. Then he goes to the championship and loses to Michigan. And the next thing you know, he's the coach at Alabama. Man, amazing.
That'd be a tough one to follow. I don't know him. I know of him. He's done a great job. He's won at every level. That's what I appreciate about him. I know people that know him well, and nothing but respect. But I'll tell you what, he just took a big bite out of that right now. The following Nick Saban, the expectation level. You lose one game and they want to run you out of town, and 2 games you never heard of. God forbid you lose 3 games. And that SEC now, you start adding Texas and Oklahoma. My goodness. I mean, jobs have just gotten really hard in the Big Ten and the SEC. So he stands for all the right stuff, but that's a tough one now. He every day, and I guess Saban's going to have an office there.
Know about that. Yeah, I mean, look, you handled it really well. You weren't the one who followed the one, but you built one, and they had to follow you, and you understand that. But you did have to deal with the specter of Steve Spurrier. I remember the day somebody showed you the book cover, but one of the books that I did about getting down with the Gators play, or whatever it is, the book I wrote about Florida football. But the point is, there was a sort of a montage, and Spurrier's image was hovering above. And someone asked you about it. You said, he deserves to be there. He deserves, but what kind of pressure does that put on you, Urban?
That was every day. Every day, you can't help but see his pictures around, and you have to live up to that standard. And quite honestly, it's borderline impossible, especially what he did as a former player. So the reality, and the board is going to face that, and that's not going away. There's no chance that will go away. That the Nick Saban shadow will be everywhere at that program. And I dealt with it in Florida. I know I didn't follow him, but I followed Coach Seth. But it was there every day, man. And maybe I put it on myself, because whenever a standard is set, it's up to you to either to enhance the standard. That's what I would always say to people. Whether you're following Tim Tebow, you can't be Tim Tebow, but you have to be, or the program is going to be not as good, obviously. So you have to enhance it and make it better. That's the job of a leader, job of a coach, job of a player. And when you're faced with those kind of standards, my goodness, almost impossible.
Yeah, and Urban, this is a different game today, but can you give us any little secrets to recruiting? All the fans want to say, let's go get Urban Meyer. He knows how to recruit, and you know it. You hear it all the time. People chanting your name, Urban Meyer, Urban Meyer, Urban Meyer, which might be flattering, but I know you don't have any interest in it. So what is the whole thing about recruiting? Has come down to dollar bills, I think, and you mentioned a basketball coach that you talked to. Well, he told you about it. Talk about that.
Yeah, I was a very famous basketball coach, and he said, you'd actually love it. I go, he said, remember the days of writing letters, text messages, getting to know families for 2 or 3 years, and then they break your heart and go somewhere else. He said, I don't do that anymore. I simply find out we're the best player, what it's going to take to get them, and I make a decision either give them that money or not. And I looked at them and I couldn't believe what I heard. But I guess at times, maybe that level, I can't imagine that's just that. But that was one of those moments. I'm like, really? So you don't really get comfortable and get to know the players' family, which I know some do because I witnessed it. I don't know if I'd enjoy that.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like another profession. I won't mention the name, when it says, let's cut to the chase. How much? It's unfortunate. That's what it's become. That's what it is now. Good for some, not so much for others. Irvin, once again, thank you so much for doing this program. I hope we can catch up during the year a bit, and we will get a date on that thing with Freddie Weeby at Steve Spurrier Ground. Irvin and Steve Spurrier talking about the glory days of Florida football. Remember, they did win championships one time, Irvin.
They will again.
Coach, thank you. My best is Shelley. Talk to you again soon.
All right, buddy. Love you, brother.
Love you, man.